Well, hello there, friends and foes, survivors and killers. We sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight, specifically the newest chapter, Descend Beyond. That time of writing is currently on the PTB. If you hop on, you can explore both the new killer known as the Blight and his accompanying survivor, Felix Richter. As someone who mostly plays killer, and overall finds Dead by Daylight's expanding cast of murderers and madmen to be the more compelling half of the roster, I'm far more interested in the Blight than I am in Felix. Don't get me wrong, I like Felix a lot for, reasons, but the Blight really is the reason this chapter has earned my attention. But I want to say here, I'm not talking about his perks, or his abilities, or how he's actually quite a bit taller than his camera angle would have you think, because, frankly, I'm not good enough at the game to talk about that competently. I've been playing on and off for a couple of years, but I still only have 200 hours on the game, and I peaked at rank 4. If you want a Blight guide, I'd recommend you find someone better at Dead by Daylight than me. Instead, I'm here to talk about something a little bit more abstract, and what makes me really drawn to the Blight is a point of discussion. The Blight is Dead by Daylight's first ever lore killer. And that's a really big statement, so I'm going to go over what I mean by that. The Blight has been a character on the periphery of the story for a little while. Despite him only coming out now, his presence has been foreshadowed for about 2 years. There's speculation about him really picking up around October 2019, when he's featured in the first ever Archives release as the subject of Tome 1 Awakening. Notably, neither the name of the Blight, nor his birth name, Talbot Grimes, were ever actually featured in these archive entries. Instead, the character described was actually called the Alchemist. In the entries, a few hallmarks of the Alchemist character shone through that have made it through to the Blight. A killer who tormented survivors in the trials, an unethical chemist who experiments on human subjects, and an addict to pustular serum. The pustular serum and the pustular petals used to make it were the core of the Withering Blight event that was going on at the same time as the Awakening Tome came out, as well as in the Hallowed Blight event in October of the previous year. Whether this was intended at the time of these events or not, I don't know, because I don't know behaviour schedules for chapter releases, or how long the Blight in his current state has been in the oven, so to speak, but foreshadowing the Blight's name by tying his origin story directly into the Hallowed Blight was a very neat move by the design team behind the Blight. It would have been very easy just to call him the Alchemist, but making him feel like part of the Hallowed Blight brought into the main game showed us that these events aren't just fun little side quests, but substantial parts of the game that demand our attention. This goes with his addiction to pustular too. He injects himself with the same putrid serum survivors collected during the Blight events. This is why I like the Blight so much. He's not just an addition to the game, but an organic part of it. But what I would consider the centerpiece of behaviours written lore here is what makes the Blight the first proper lore killer. He's the only killer in the game who has had absolutely confirmed canonical interactions with the other killers in the realm of the entity. In the second memory of the Alchemist's archive, he is confirmed to have experimented on none other than Herman Carter himself, the Doctor. This confirms that the killers don't just exist in their own little bubbles when the entity is not using them in trials, but instead have some level of personal freedom within the realm of the entity, and share a wider world in which they can coexist and interact. This has never been outright confirmed before, only jokingly alluded to by the developers shipping the Wraith and the Nurse. This isn't a one-off either. One of his add-ons is a vial of the Plague's bile he uses in a concoction, and the Hallowed and Withering Blight skin lines show the effect of the pustular serum on several of the other killers he presumably experimented on, including both the Doctor and the Plague. Some people have suggested that this element of the story is no longer canon, since the
somewhere else, another world
part of the clip suggests that the Doctor and the Blight interacted in the regular world before being taken by the entity, which would make no sense, since Talbot Grimes was a Scottish chemist in the 19th century, while Herman Carter was an American doctor in the 60s or 70s. To these people, I would draw your attention to the first line of the first memory.
He moves through the death and decay of the void.
When the narrator is describing Talbot's memories of another world, Talbot himself is in the void. The
somewhere else
is the realm of the entity, not the real world. The Alchemist story takes place before he becomes the Blight, as the serum-chugging, speed-running crackhead we see in the game today. Look, this is all getting quite confusing, so I'm just going to summarise the full lore of the Blight right here, right now, using all the knowledge and revelations that we've had so far. Okay? Let's go. Talbot Grimes' life on Earth was spent in the employ of the British East India Company during one of the Opium Wars in China. Frustratingly, behaviour doesn't actually tell us which of the Opium Wars he was part of, but fortunately I'm a clever clog, so I figured it out. The Opium Wars were between 1839 and 1842, and later 1856 to 1860. The British East India Company was actually dissolved in 1847, so his operations on Dyer Island would have to have taken place during the First Opium War, so between 1839 and 1842. This is when he was doing his experiments on prisoners of war, like a certain someone else we all know and love. By the way, Dyer Island. It's not anywhere near India. It's in Bermuda, just in case you were interested. The entity took him from the opium den he wound up in and brought him into the fog, where his experiments continued. Before long, these lovely fellows and fellowettes wound up with a nice new makeover at the Pustular Boutique. At this point, I'd be comfortable with him being referred to as the alchemist, since his primary motivation seems to be curiosity and general mad science shit, instead of addiction to the pustular serum itself. Eventually, the entity sent him to the void, where the dried out and soulless husks of spent survivors are left to fade away. Perhaps this implies that Talbot was a survivor, who used the strength the pustular petals gave him to turn the tables on the killers, but we really don't know that for sure. Whatever happened to him, he found pustular flowers in the void, which he used to make his serum and regain his strength, and came back to the entity's realm in full grip of addiction to that serum. Talbot Grimes made a promise that day. He swore away service to the entity in exchange for access to the serum he so craved. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Blight we see today. And that's more or less it, frankly. I really hope you can see now why I value the Blight's addition to the cast so highly. It's a sign from behaviour that they're really willing to take the lore of their game seriously and try and actually build a well-crafted world out of all the pieces they've got going on, and I really do value that commitment. I still have a couple of questions about the Blight, mostly about how this mad addicted chemist idea translates into the game, and questions about Talbot Grimes' existence that open up who Vigo might be. But they're not really holes in the Blight's lore itself, so I'm just going to leave them be for now. Maybe in the future, when we learn more about Vigo, I'll take another look at him to really get to the bottom of those mysteries, but for now I'm happy to wrap things up here. Okay, this question is now for you all listening right now, if there is anyone out there. I have lots of ideas of what I want to do with this channel, and it matters to me enormously what you guys want to listen to. I'm here to do breakdowns on basically anything, interesting stories, certain killers, certain survivors, stuff from other games. If you want to hear me talk about these stories I love so much, give me some suggestions, give me some ideas. If you've got a story that you want me to break down, or a character you think I should do a deep dive on, let me know in the comments and I'll happily I'll add it to my list. Thank you, stay safe, wear a mask, and good night to you all.